Origin Rex, and this is How Did Ancient Medieval Borders Work? Short anime documentary by the channel History Matters. Okay, this is a really interesting topic, right? Obviously, we know today as first of all, in European Union, I think there are not many hard borders, right? I mean, that would be just sign or something that you're entering another country or something, right? Because you don't need hard borders inside European Union, but obviously, we know that today basically there are borders and we can track them with, many technologies basically, right? That this is the border and, whatever. But how did they do that in ancient medieval time? I mean, if I were to think that obviously the, civilization wasn't that densely populated, so I guess there was some denser area, then slowly it gets more thinner and thinner before it just distance just miles and miles of just ground, and I guess they just assume like somewhere here there's border and there's another kingdom there. I don't know. Otherwise, I don't know how they would do that. I guess whoever can defend a certain area, that's the border. If you can't defend it, anybody can just walk in at certain area. Yeah, you don't have that border there. So wherever you have control is the border. I don't know, but yeah, concept of border came with when we basically humans start to learn how to farm, and as soon as we learn how to do farm, hunting wasn't necessary thousands of years ago, right? And so basically cities start to pop up, right? So yeah, and obviously another city pops up together, town or whatever, and there you go, borders. I don't know. So let's watch it. History Matters is a great channel. I like reacting to this channel because they usually tackle interesting topics like this, and they're just like 3 or 4 minutes, so you can just watch it. Oh, look at that was interesting, and just move on. Yeah, let's watch it.
In the town of Bar-le-Nassau, there is a line on the floor. If you're on one side of this line, you're in the Netherlands with its fancy windmills. If you're on the other, you're in Belgium with its convenient access for German armoured divisions. Nowadays, many a nation is easily recognisable by its silhouette, and within the borders of a nation, we can easily determine who its people are and all that good stuff. The obvious question is, was it so clear in the ancient or medieval world? Let's say you're a Roman peasant. Congratulations, during the reign of Emperor Hadrian, who ruled Rome at its greatest territorial
Hadrian's
extent.
Wall.
If you simply walked north from Rome, when, if ever, would you know that you'd left the Roman Empire? See, Rome is a good example when discussing borders, because it had a centralised government, a professional army whose job it was to protect the empire, and also the Romans had a good sense of borders, which they called limes. Unsurprisingly, much of Rome's limes stopped at natural barriers, like mountain ranges or perhaps most notably the Rhine or Danubian rivers.
What surprised me that I'm pretty sure the Greeks could have keep track of the borders, right? Because Greeks were one of the first people who could measure skies with where the planets are, wanderers basically, right? Planetae. So they were kind of anal with that, right? There were mathematicians around that time. So basically they were kind of accurate in a way than we would think, at least. Like, they knew how to track of things. So they probably would have been able to track. And Romans basically just kind of descendant of Greeks, or just taken things from the Greeks. So it makes sense like how they would be anal like that too, who can basically track and be more specific with things.
The border was sporadically lined with watchtowers and wooden fortifications where possible, but this was a long border and so naturally much of it was unmarked. The biggest exception to this was of course Hadrian's Wall. Maps like this make it look like these areas were firmly in Rome's control and that those outside were entirely foreign. To put it bluntly, this simply wasn't the case. There were settlements close to the empire's borders who made quite a living trading with Rome, and many of those within the Roman Empire didn't really see themselves as being Roman. Looking at you, Britannia. So travelling in and out of the empire wasn't too difficult, and many traders did so regularly, even via hard borders like Hadrian's Wall. This ease of travel is why there's so many Roman items and coins found throughout Central, Eastern and Northern Europe. Of course, in the south of the empire, basically the North African...
Also, obviously Caesar, right? We know, how Julius Caesar and basically lots of Romans did different campaigns even after even beyond Roman territories, right? So obviously there was trading and things like that. So it would be pretty hard to just keep track of the border, but it just implied that this, I guess it based on military strategy and convenience, like how hard it is to keep up certain place, right? Like basically, if you are here, you know that there are no mountains here or something. The mountain or something starts here. So this area you can easily defend it. So just consider this whole area yours because you can easily defend it or something like that.
In Egypt, the southern borders were much harder to patrol.
Wait a minute. Oh, I was doing here. I was talking about this area, right? Like if you are somewhere here and there are just nothing here for a long distance, you can easily access it and defend it. So you consider this your area.
Coast in Egypt, the southern borders were much harder to patrol. Egypt's southern frontier was one such difficult border, but it did bring great profits. Here, the Romans had to deal with tribes like the Blemye. You may have heard of them before because the Romans believed that these were a people who didn't have heads. The Romans had a good trading relationship with the Blemye, who acted as intermediaries between Rome and the south of Africa, but the Blemye would occasionally raid too. Perhaps Rome's most important border was that with the Parthian, later Sasanian Persian Empire. Here, the border was a series of fortifications with many legions waiting for any Persian invasion, but again people could and did travel between them. None of what I've told you was stagnant though. Rome's borders and the look of them fluctuated massively over the centuries.
I was about to say.
It all came crashing down. So moving forward over...
I saw the Doherty series. Basically, I mean, yeah, sure, that's a border, but there were constant conflicts, right? With Sassanids and things, there were constant conflicts, right? Sometimes Rome loses, sometimes Rome wins, and it's a border just fluctuate, I guess.
1,000 years from Hadrian, we reach the medieval period, and here we'll focus on the Anglo-Scottish border, formalised in the 1237 Treaty of York. Just to let you know, the Anglo-Scottish border is not marked by Hadrian's Wall, the entirety of which lies in England. This may come as a shock to you, but throughout history, England and Scotland have not been the best of friends. The borderlands, known as the Marches, played host to many a raid or military campaign over the centuries, as both sides sought to bring the other into a permanent state of non-existence. During times of peace, the two...
I think England's anthem had that phrase, right? Rebellious Scots to crush or something, that later removed or something. But they kept it for a long time just to stick it to Scottish people.
Two lands had to coexist, and local lords came to agreements such as allowing livestock from either kingdom to graze on each other's lands. That's not to say things were peaceful. Bandits, or reeves as they were known, would raid across the border often. In fact, the practice of Scottish raiders extorting money from Englishmen gave birth to the word blackmail, roughly translated as meaning illicit rent. Policing these raids was basically impossible since there was no government capable enough to oversee the roughly 100-mile border. The law of the land on both sides was essentially try not to die, and neither the Scottish nor the English crowns were able to do much about it. Needless to say, the border between the two kingdoms in 1237 wasn't simply this line, it was blurred and much of it wasn't defined by natural barriers. To conclude, borders in the modern sense didn't exist either in theory or in practice in the ancient or medieval world. What we think of today as borders, those things which can block individuals from moving into a political entity, simply weren't feasible 1,000 years ago. Instead of strict borders, there were frontiers which marked a gradual shift from one polity to the next. The frontiers were primarily used by empires or kingdoms to keep out mass movements, i.e. armies instead of individuals, and in that sense they worked quite well. I hope you enjoyed this episode and thank you for watching, and a special thanks to all of these patrons you see on screen for their generosity in supporting the show, and a particularly special thanks to James...
Yeah, there we go. So yeah, I mean, obviously it makes sense, right? Border kind of fluctuate, right? Nobody can really, say which. It's your ability to defend, and I guess geological locations, right? Like I said before, like if you can see certain area for a long distance, it's just clear and you can defend it. That area is yours. Beyond that, there are mountains and things. It's harder, right? Enemy forces can easily occupy that, so that's not your area because you can't defend it. Something like that. But yeah, it always fluctuated because there's always some kind of a conflict. But during the medieval time, like he said, obviously, people can agree on something, but that doesn't necessarily mean that agreeing is going to work, right? There's still going to be conflict. Hell, even today, there is no such thing as hard border, right? People still can't decide what border is, right? And just move in more inside and just move in somebody else's country, China. So, yeah. What was that episode of Grand Tour, right? It was Grand Tour. I think it was Grand Tour where they took Stalin's head or something from statue or something. I think it was that episode where they went to a place where there was a guy who was living there. They suddenly overnight realized that he just moved to different country because Russians, or I don't know which country they were talking about, but they basically overnight just moved the border inward and moved the fence. Now that guy is suddenly in another country. Like, what the fuck? So let's be honest, there is no such thing as border even in today. I guess Google Map getting accurate can help with that. right? If you just move the border, Google Map will be like, yeah, you just move the map. You just move the border. But yeah. Right, people, if you like my reaction, don't forget to subscribe. Comment down if you want to react to any specific video. I see comments if I can, I guess. There are lots of comments in different videos, so it's hard to track. But yeah, in the newer videos, I usually keep track of the comments. So comment down if you want to react to any specific videos. Then yeah, I'll see you next time.